It was a quiet evening in the neighborhood of Oakwood, just outside of Denver. One Friday afternoon, a shiny black Mustang drove down Pinecrest Avenue, coming to a halt in a spot marked "No Parking." The car's tires screeched, drawing the attention of a few neighbors who glanced over and then quickly looked away. They knew that Mustang all too well. Inside the car sat Bradley Taylor, the 21-year-old son of Mayor Jeffrey Taylor. Bradley was known for his wild behavior, flashy cars, and a confidence that came from knowing his father held one of the most powerful positions in town. He often strutted around Oakwood with a smirk, like he owned the place. And in a way, he believed he did. Today, however, was going to be different. Just as Bradley stepped out of his car, pulling his sunglasses down to flash a smug look at an elderly couple watching him from their porch, he noticed the blue and red lights of a patrol car pulling up behind him. Officers Nathan Cole and Jamie Porter, two of Oakwood's finest, had been on a routine patrol when they spotted the Mustang in the no-parking zone. They both knew of Bradley, and they both knew he often got away with things most people wouldn't. But today, they were determined to put a stop to it. "Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor," Officer Cole called out as he approached. He kept his tone calm but firm, while Officer Porter stood nearby, observing quietly. Bradley rolled his eyes. "What do you want now?" he sneered, crossing his arms. "We're here to give you a ticket," Officer Cole replied, pulling out his notepad. "You're parked illegally in a no-parking zone." Bradley let out a loud, exaggerated sigh, brushing his hair back dramatically. "Oh, come on. This is my dad's town. I don't think anyone cares where I park." The officer didn't waver. "Everyone has to follow the rules, Mr. Taylor. Even you." Officer Porter stepped in, trying to keep the situation calm. "Look, Bradley," she said kindly. "It's just a ticket. Pay it, and this'll all be over." But Bradley wasn't having it. His face turned red with anger, and he jabbed a finger at Officer Cole. "Don't talk to me like that. Do you know who my dad is? I can have you both out of this job by tomorrow." A few of the neighbors watched from their windows, some already pulling out their phones to record. Officer Cole didn't budge. He calmly filled out the ticket, tore it off the pad, and handed it to Bradley. Bradley stared at the ticket, his face twisting in anger. He snatched it from Officer Cole's hand and crumpled it, throwing it to the ground. "You don't get to treat me like this," he said. Officer Porter took a step back, sensing the situation was about to escalate, but Officer Cole held his ground, his voice still calm. "Mr. Taylor, I'm asking you to respect the law. If you continue with this behavior, we'll have no choice but to take further action." Bradley took a step closer, his face inches from Officer Cole's. "You think you're tough, don't you?" he said. Without warning, Bradley's hand shot up, and he swung it hard, slapping Officer Cole across the face. A hush fell over the street as the sound of the slap echoed down Pinecrest Avenue. Officer Cole didn't move. He simply took a deep breath, his face now calm but resolute. Officer Porter, however, had seen enough. She reached for her radio. "Dispatch, we're going to need backup," she said. Bradley's cocky expression started to falter. For the first time, he noticed the neighbors watching, their phones recording every second. He opened his mouth to say something, but the officers were already moving. Officer Cole turned to Bradley, his voice steady. "Bradley Taylor, you're under arrest for assaulting a law enforcement officer." Bradley's eyes widened, panic flickering across his face. "Wait, no, you can't arrest me. I didn't mean to." But Officer Porter had already pulled out the handcuffs, snapping them around his wrists. Bradley struggled, his confidence crumbling with every passing second. As the officers led him toward the patrol car, he looked around, desperate for someone to help, but all he saw were the stern faces of the townspeople, watching the scene unfold. The last thing Bradley heard before he was pushed into the back of the police car was Officer Cole's calm voice. "Nobody is above the law, Mr. Taylor. Not even you." As the patrol car drove off, the neighbors slowly returned to their homes, murmuring to each other about the shocking turn of events. In Oakwood, justice had been served, and a long overdue lesson was just beginning. As the patrol car drove toward the Oakwood police station, Bradley squirmed in the back seat, his wrists aching from the handcuffs. He glared through the metal grate separating him from Officers Cole and Porter, his face still red from a mix of anger and humiliation. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, tugging at the cuffs. "Do you seriously think my dad is going to let this slide?" Officer Porter exchanged a quick look with Cole but stayed focused on the road. Bradley's threats were nothing new to them. Growing up with his father as mayor had given him a sense of entitlement that led him into trouble more times than they could count. But this time was different. This time, he had crossed a line no one could ignore. They pulled up to the station, a modest building that stood proudly in the center of Oakwood. Officer Cole got out first, opening the back door and helping Bradley out. "Come on," he said firmly, guiding Bradley inside. As they walked through the station, a few officers glanced over, eyebrows raised. They all recognized Bradley and had heard of his antics, but seeing him in cuffs was a surprise. A few murmured to each other, shaking their heads as Officer Cole led Bradley to a small room for processing. Bradley couldn't believe this was happening. His mind raced with thoughts of how to fix this, how to get out of this mess without it tarnishing his reputation. Finally, as they reached the processing room, he spotted an opportunity, the station's phone on the counter. "Let me call my dad," he said, his tone shifting to one of entitlement. Officer Cole considered for a moment, then nodded. "You have one call. Use it wisely." Bradley grabbed the phone, his fingers shaking slightly as he dialed. After a few rings, his father's familiar voice picked up on the other end. "Dad, it's me. You need to come down to the station. These officers arrested me, over a parking ticket," he exclaimed, omitting the part about slapping an officer. On the other end, Mayor Taylor was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply. "Bradley, what exactly did you do?" "I told you, it was nothing. They're just trying to make a big deal out of it because I'm your son. Can you just come down here and talk some sense into them?" The mayor hesitated, his voice quiet but firm. "I'll be there soon, Bradley. But remember, there are consequences to actions, even for you." Bradley handed the phone back to Officer Cole, giving him a smug grin. "My dad will be here soon. You're in for it now." But Officer Cole simply nodded, his expression unreadable. "Let's finish the processing." They took Bradley's fingerprints and mugshot, all the while ignoring his snide comments and eye rolls. The minutes ticked by slowly until, finally, Mayor Taylor arrived. As he entered the station, heads turned. Mayor Taylor had always been a respected leader, known for his fair judgment and dedication to Oakwood, but everyone wondered if he would put family over principle. The mayor was led to the small waiting room where Bradley sat, his hands free now but his attitude as cocky as ever. When he saw his father, he smiled, expecting an immediate release. "Dad! Finally, let's get out of here," he said, standing up. But his father's expression was anything but approving. He looked down at Bradley, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Bradley, sit down," he said, his voice steely. Bradley's smile faltered as he sank back into his chair. "Dad, what's going on? I thought you'd just..." "Just what, Bradley?" Mayor Taylor interrupted, folding his arms. "Sweep this under the rug? Pretend like you didn't assault an officer? Because that's what this is about, isn't it?" Bradley blinked, taken aback. His father's tone was serious, with no hint of the leniency he had counted on. "But, Dad, it was just a slap. He was provoking me. They wouldn't stop hounding me over a dumb parking spot." The mayor shook his head slowly. "Do you even hear yourself? You're talking like the rules don't apply to you, like you're above everyone else. This isn't the first time you've let your temper get the better of you, but it's the first time you've done something serious enough to hurt someone." For the first time that evening, Bradley's confidence began to waver. His father wasn't there to rescue him, or to lecture the officers. He was there to confront him. "Dad, you can't be serious," Bradley said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. Mayor Taylor sighed deeply, a mixture of disappointment and resolve in his eyes. "I've done everything I can to give you a good life, Bradley. But you've got to understand, actions have consequences. And sometimes those consequences are out of my hands. Bradley shook his head, refusing to accept what was happening. But you're the mayor! You can fix this. You can tell them to drop it. That's not how this works, Bradley. And if you thought it was, then maybe I've failed you as a father. The words stung more than Bradley would have admitted. He clenched his fists, frustration and shame bubbling up inside him. He wanted to argue, to fight, but he could see that nothing he said would change his father's mind. Mayor Taylor turned to Officer Cole, his expression somber. I'll let the law handle this. My son needs to learn that his actions have consequences, and if that means spending some time reflecting on his behavior here, then so be it. Bradley's face fell. Dad, you can't leave me here! He shouted, panic breaking through his voice. Mayor Taylor met his son's pleading gaze with a calm, unwavering stare. Bradley, I love you. But I can't always be there to clean up your messes. It's time for you to grow up. And with that, he turned and walked out of the station, leaving Bradley staring after him, stunned. The reality of his situation began to sink in as he sat alone in the quiet of the processing room, his arrogance melting away, replaced by a growing sense of regret and fear. Bradley sat alone in the holding cell, his mind replaying his father's words over and over. The minutes felt like hours as he glanced around at the cold walls and the steel bars that held him inside. This was the first time he truly felt trapped, with no escape, no one to shield him from the consequences of his actions. The weight of everything hit him like a punch. He thought of his friends, who'd always been quick to cheer him on as he pushed boundaries, and the people of Oakwood, who had watched him take advantage of his father's position time and time again. But none of them were here now. He was on his own. A few hours later, Officer Cole returned, his expression calm but direct. Well, Mr. Taylor, he said, unlocking the cell, you're free to go. Your bail has been posted. You're going to have a court date, and there will be some community service hours assigned, but for now, you can go home. Bradley blinked, surprised. He wasn't expecting to be released so soon, but the mention of community service and a court date sobered him. The reality that he'd be facing the law, the same law he disrespected, finally struck him. He nodded quietly, following Officer Cole down the hallway and out into the lobby where his father was waiting. Mayor Taylor stood by the door, arms crossed and expression unreadable. When he saw Bradley, he gave a small nod but said nothing, waiting until they were both outside in the cool evening air. Finally, he turned to his son. This isn't over, Bradley, he said firmly. You've got a lot to answer for, and I won't be standing in the way of justice. But I hope this experience has shown you what real responsibility looks like. Bradley swallowed, the weight of shame settling in. I get it, Dad. I'm sorry for everything. Mayor Taylor nodded, his face softening slightly. Good. Now let's go home. But remember, from now on, you stand on your own 2 feet. If you want respect, you earn it. The people of Oakwood deserve that much. Bradley nodded slowly, the lesson settling deep within him. And as they walked home in silence, he knew one thing for sure: the days of hiding behind his father's title were over. This brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Kindly subscribe for more thrilling stories. Like and share this video. Have a nice day.